Hello and welcome, Holly. Thank you so much for joining the podcast here. Would like to have introduction. If you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Holly, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Holly Blair, and I run a consulting company called Lean Possibilities. I'm a chemical engineer by background, and the consulting company, we now work with small, mid-sized manufacturers across Canada and help them figure out how to reduce costs, implement systems and processes that actually work, and ultimately make more of whatever they make, reduce costs, and be more profitable.
So, Holly, you work with a lot of manufacturers who are investing in ERP, AI, automation. Why do so many of them or these investments fail to deliver results?
Well, it's not so much the technology's fault, because technology is awesome. And don't get me wrong, I love technology. It's all very cool and shiny and sexy, and like it does all the cool stuff, and it's supposed to make life easier. But the problem is that people get enrolled in these like shiny, exciting new technologies. And as great as they are, if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So if you don't do the work ahead of time to streamline, optimize, improve your process, and then you just throw an automation or AI tool at it, it'll do what it does, but it may not produce the result you were intending.
No, that's very true. Um, I like the idea garbage in, garbage out because the system is good, but if you do not input the right data or
Exactly.
inputs in there, then you're going to get bad data out, and that would lead to bad decision making, I'm guessing. And what's the biggest mistake that companies make when they implement new technology?
Probably going too fast, too soon. The lean process work really establishes a foundation and creates what the need actually is for a business to succeed. So the AI tools and automation and all the fancy stuff, they come in like later on in the process and near the end once you've established what your actual problem is, what you need to do to resolve it. And then the AI tools can help you work to prevent it from happening again and identifying it when it happens and then making it easier, faster, more effective to deal with.
Where do you say, like, don't automate chaos? Uh,
Yeah.
can you explain what it means?
So automating chaos, if your production floor is just full of rework, errors, defects, whatever your process is, if it's not working really well, then you're going to take that bad process or process with a lot of breakdowns in it. You go automate that. Now you've just got a system that really accelerates the waste and amplifies it and doesn't actually solve the problem you're trying to intend it to.
Yeah, that's true. Basically, yeah, I think it also goes back to the same thing. You don't put a, you know, you don't have a great input, uh, basically, and the output is not guaranteed, right? So same in the same lines, I think this is also true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what actually happens when a company, layers technology on top of the inefficient or broken processes?
Well, what happens typically is they'll lose visibility and flexibility and ultimately money, and their problems get buried in systems. And then instead of fixing issues, people start working around them, and it becomes ultimately more complex instead of more efficient.
And can you share an example, let's say, where technology made operations worse instead of making it better?
Yeah, I can't give out any specific details there, but I've had clients that went to go implement an ERP system without standardizing their process first. And what happened was they had some inaccurate inventory and a bunch of scheduling chaos, and then they ultimately created all of these manual workaround processes. So they spent like six figures just to make a more complicated version of the same problems. And then they invited us in to help them sort that out. And eventually we got down to something that we gave a list of enhancements and opportunities to the ERP system folks to enhance the process so that the system matched their process instead of trying to get the production process to match into the ERP system.
Mhm. That makes sense. And why do leaders often assume that technology is going to fix what really are, process problems?
Because it feels like you're making progress, and buying software platforms is pretty easy to do, and you can get sold on a really cool, shiny, awesome technology fix. But fixing your processes is not so glamorous. It's definitely not the sexy part. And it requires fixing your processes really requires discipline and alignment and a lot of change management practices. But it that approach delivers a lot stronger results off the bat, and then you can implement the software. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the ERP systems and technology solutions. There's a time and place, and people tend to jump to them too soon, too fast.
I have to align what I've read somewhere, process system and people should align with each other.
Totally.
So either of them go off, at the
Any one of them goes off, yeah.
okay. And what does it mean to like do lean first before implementing ERP, AI, or automation?
Well, typically it looks like building a process map from start to finish of your core process, typically from order received to order delivered. And sometimes that involves procurement and receiving and inventory management practices. But if you can understand at a high enough level with enough detail, so it's like high enough but low enough at the same time, how the process currently works, so that's distinct from how it is supposed to work or how you think it works, but this is how it actually works, where you can uncover the process waste hiding in your process and then identify places to create standard repeatable processes and basically standardize and simplify everything before you go digital.
What are the critical lean fundamentals companies should have in place before investing in technology?
Definitely understanding the process flow, like I just said, but also things like standard work, visual management, some basic performance tracking with KPIs and targets, knowing how you're doing relative to the plan, things like tracking downtime and defects, and then having actions to reduce defects and reduce downtime, and having a system to do that in, so it's not just a one-off effort. Because if you don't have that foundation of the standard work and the defined processes, then your technology doesn't have a lot of solid foundation to be built upon.
And you talked about visual management. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, visual management is got many elements to it. It can be as simple as color coding and painted lines or tape lines on the floor that show where to walk or where a pallet belongs. But it's also a way of using dashboards and visual management systems to demonstrate how production's actually going. So you can see someone who does not familiar with the production line will be able to walk up to the board and quickly tell if they're on or off track by saying what their target was for the day, where they're at, what issues there are. It's usually involved with the escalation process to resolve issues up and down the leadership chain.
And then how does starting with lean impact the return on investment for the technology?
Typically improves it dramatically because these solutions, they're great and they're often quite expensive. So if you can apply the technology solution to a strong optimized system instead of trying to fix the broken one with the software, you typically get faster implementation, better adoption, and then that gets you into the savings that the technology actually provides a lot faster.
And where do companies lose the most money when they skip the step?
Typically, it's in rework, excess downtime, and excess inventory. So technology doesn't really fix those problems. It just automates them. And it sometimes even makes them harder to see and more expensive to solve. So if you don't have a good system for managing how your operations actually runs, then the ERP system or the technology can often mask the problem instead of highlighting the issue and driving the resolution.
And then what kind of improvements can companies achieve with lean alone?
Oh, there's all kinds of opportunities there. That's why it's called lean possibilities. But typically things like reduced downtime, better quality product, higher throughput, typically lower operating costs. It's pretty typical to be able to go into an organization and do a lean assessment and then find anywhere from 20 to 40% savings on just eliminating waste alone. And the beauty of that is a lot of it doesn't require capital investment. So it's just time and resources, um, and uh, and some consulting fees, but it is very low cost in terms of capital investment.
Yeah, and also in comparison of the cost of quality that you would see in,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's a whole thing. We could do a whole show on that one too, Avanish.
that's true.
The cost of quality, it's typically overlooked, and people only think about the cost of the defect. But there's many other ways to look at it that are a lot more proactive.
Certainly do a podcast on cost of quality. Great. And how can a company tell if they're actually ready for automation or AI?
Well, if you've been operating for a while, I wouldn't jump in with a brand new company right away. I'd like to figure out what your process is first and then figure out the technology solution that matches it. But once your processes are stable, you've got some reliable data to work with, and you're reliably hitting your performance targets. If you're still in the daily firefighting mode, it's probably not quite time yet. You want to focus more on some lean improvements first, just because of the investment that it is. And if your process is not working well, you could have the best technology, but it's not going to perform the way you expect.
Yeah, that is true. Technology itself is not going to do wonders.
No, there's no magic wand, unfortunately.
A lot of people think, just spend the money and it's going to happen, just
Yeah,
because
if
you
I
pay the
just
bill.
throw enough money at the problem, it'll go away.
Yeah, true. So if I'm a plant manager, let's say, considering an ERP system right now, what should I do first?
First thing, well, you can do kind of two things in parallel. You can start shopping around for what ERP system matches your organization, your size, and capabilities and functionalities that you need. So you can kind of start looking at what's possible out there in technology, but before you go select one, uh, you want to map your process from start to finish, identify and eliminate process waste out of your process. So that's defects, excess waiting times, excess inventory, rework, motion waste, people moving around looking for stuff, everything that gets in the way of you being productive and efficient. So you want to really stabilize your operations, get some standardized work in place, follow the procedures, start to hit your targets and your production performance measures. And then you can establish the requirements for what your ERP system needs to be able to do for your company. Then you can match the requirements up to the various ERP systems that you may have researched.
And what's one simple step a company can take this week to get started with lean?
The first thing will be to educate yourself on what lean is about, and you could go for a walk around your plant, your production process, and look for the 8 kinds of process waste. So you've got defects, that's anything that comes out of the process that is not the way it was supposed to be or it arrives and it's not supposed to be that way. So there's 8 kinds of waste, and they follow an acronym called downtime. Do we have defects? So that's anything that comes out or goes into your process that is not the way it's supposed to be. O is for overproduction, making more than what your customer actually needs. So if you're making stuff just to go into inventory. Waiting, that one's usually the most obvious and easy to recognize. It's anytime there's a delay or a wait step waiting for inputs to the process. Non-utilized talent, which is highly skilled workers doing low skilled tasks, menial activities just because no one else can do it or there's no standardized way, or maybe that's not an opportunity for automation in the future. Transportation is moving stuff around your plant, so your forklift movements. If you have the habit of filling your warehouse aisles with materials and then you have to move the pallets out of the way every time you need to go down that aisle. Inventory, holding on to more than you need or not enough, and you're always having frequent stockouts. Motion waste, which is people moving around a lot and inefficiently. So people searching for tools or materials or information. And then the last one is excess processing. And this is doing things more than once. All the rework to correct some of those defects from the beginning of the 8 wastes. And so if you can start to recognize some of those, a lot of them typically have some very quick win, quick fix type of activities. And you can stop and ask people, have a little conversation about what the source of that problem is and start to implement some pretty simple solutions that have things move forward.
So what's your advice to companies, who are about to invest in technology without addressing the process first?
I'd say pause for a second and take a step back, because there unfortunately is no magic wand out there. And if you don't fix the foundation first, you're going to spend a lot of money trying to make your problems more efficient, but you're going to make them more complicated before you get there.
Yeah. So if someone wants to make sure they get this right, where they should start.
Yeah, that comes up a lot in my discovery calls with clients. And the typical answer is with a discovery session and a lean assessment. You want to get a good picture of your current state of your operations, where you're losing time, where you're losing money, where defects are coming from, the source of the downtime issues you're having. Fix the process, get a plan together for that, and then bring in technology to augment and improve it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, for answering all the questions so well.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
welcome.
I think we'll be looking forward to our next one pretty soon. Stay tuned. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.